All right, sweet. Hopefully this is working. I should probably check. um, I don't know if anyone in the chat can tell me whether this actually. Oh, sweet. It says 18 people. Okay, cool. Well, welcome everyone. I'd say I wasn't expecting a Roaring Kitty tweet, but I actually did text a few people. I was like, I really think Roaring Kitty is going to tweet. So yeah, thanks. This is my Enron shirt. It's not I don't speak for Enron, although maybe I could guess what they're doing. It seems that they're doing the same thing that Flexport is doing, but for energy. We'll see. I can see the roadmap, and the CEO the CEO looks cool. Hey, Rock, what's up? Yeah, Stargate. So that's what I what I was going to say. Ian did a video on Stargate, and I had kind of heard someone say, "Oh, someone had said there was they'd offered Trump 100 billion, and then he's like, how about two? And then he came with five. And anyway, I was paying attention to other things today, so I didn't really check out that video, and I finally did, and it was pretty creepy. Not gonna lie, it kind of seemed like Trump was being held hostage, and I mean, the one thing that really creeped me out was he says, "Oh, being a new president," he's like, "Those aren't my words." And it's like, well, whose words are they? So we'll get into that in a second. But I mean, a Roaring Kitty tweet is pretty awesome. So I was actually expecting this morning, like my crazy chart. I'd pull it up, but it looks like Schizo made it. So my chart was saying that there was some decision point this morning, and so I was actually expecting that to, I don't know, maybe be part of it as a tweet pre-market. But then we got one after the end of aftermarket, and so I think we're already up. I don't know, 3.5% or something. But all we needed was a jump in volume, and so I think that'll be here. So so that's definitely exciting. Let's see. Let's see the Roaring Kitty tweet first, though. I haven't done this in a little while, so we'll just play it. Hopefully you guys can hear this.
In your heart, believe what in my heart I know, that forevermore I'll wait for you. The clock will tick away the hours one by one, and then the time will come when all the waiting's done. The time when you return and find me here and run straight to my waiting arms. If it takes forever, I will wait for you for 1,000 summers. I will wait for you.
All right, so I mean, there's a lot of ways this could go. One is obviously Chewy, right? Ryan Cohen's old company. Another one actually is when you read about the plot, it says Jurassic Park, the 7th episode in the 4th season, Futurama. Let's see. The plot revolves around Fry, who finds a fossilized version of his dog Seymour from before he was frozen. Fry seeks to have his pet brought back to life. And then, let's see. So it just made me think like, that like finding a fossilized, something you want, like something you, I guess, were invested in, right? and then it's fossilized in a way that you can bring it back. That's, I don't know, that sounds like Ryan Cohen and Bed Bath and Beyond. So I think that, even the idea right here where it says that the professor, oh, let's see, Fry begins to prepare the dog, and Bender becomes jealous just when the professor is ready to clone Seymour. Bender arrives angry that Fry will not spend time with him. He grabs the fossil and throws it into a pit of lava, believing that will restore his friendship with Fry. Fry is furious at Bender and extremely upset at having lost Seymour. Bender realizes how Fry could love an inferior creature and apologizes for what he did. The professor explains that the fossil may not have instantly melted as it was made of dolomite. With this in mind, Bender, claiming to be partly made of dolomite, dives into the lava and recovers the fossil. So, I mean, I think we saw a lot of people try to sabotage Bed Bath & Beyond. I mean, a lot of people don't know why we're still waiting. And I think it's mainly because there are ways that if you have ins in the judicial system or in the federal agencies especially, you can kind of delay things, right? There was talks of it being an antitrust violation from the FCC, right? The FCC, stop shooting down my balloons. You have, I think one of the big ones was actually that when the plan was confirmed, I think there was money set aside from the third-party release from the settlement with J.P. Morgan or whoever it was, billions of dollars for like them, because that's what killed the company. So, the damages are, and kind of actually, I guess, might as well do it while we're talking about it. I was planning on being on the PP show. I hadn't necessarily, anyway. And there's so much to going on, so I didn't really know what I want to talk about. But this kind of this was interesting. So this is kind of ties into the third party release as far as how much money it would be, and so this is right around the time, if you look at so you have J.P. Morgan Trust right here. This is right after the executives that Ryan put on the board had tapped the insurance to do a lawsuit. My speculation is that they were suing the board members for tanking the company, or they were suing, J.P. Morgan, because J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs had a special meeting with Gustavo Arnold and Mark Triton to like how they could swing the idea of share buybacks. And they had that secret meeting off the records, which they're not allowed to do. And in it, they lied about the numbers, right? So there's just kind of no way they can get out of that. That is, I guess you could say the smoking gun. And so anyway, this is right around that time. So if they're trying to calculate a value of what was the company worth when it got destroyed, that number probably could have been calculated, right around this time period. And so it says semi-annual shareholder report, right? Well, kind of beginning of 2023 to the end of 2024, that doesn't sound like semi-annual, right? And then also you have Nomura here. It's even worse, right? Which that's fascinating because this is all the way back in, it was supposed to be filed in, right when Ryan Cohen was selling back in 2022. So all the way till just like 12 days ago, right? That, if you're going to hold someone accountable, you have to, they have to show you how many shares they have, right? And in this litigation, they did, when I talked to the plan admin and Gordon more specifically, he said that they were getting the data from the DTCC. I don't know. I mean, I still think they would have to have an official filing. The banks that held shares or shorted shares, I think they would still have to have a filing saying how much is there. So maybe this was needed as part of that. If you look at this, you can see Bed Bath and Beyond right here. These are in thousands, so 21,000 shares, and it's valued at $130,000, right? So that's like $6.1 per share. I think it's interesting that there was some talk about this $6 being what the bonds would be converted at, and in the filings there was also some kind of seemed to allude to the fact that that there was some disagreement on how much, like what the conversion ratio would be, and that there was like a meeting scheduled. One of the meetings, that's kind of typically what it would be, is that the creditors can kind of adjust those rates. And I think all the different evaluations, off the top of my head, it's been a long journey, so I can't spit them all out. But I definitely remember lots of different evaluations being proposed, like, and the potential evaluations of this business model, how much that'd be worth. So I think all those numbers have to be there to know who owes what, who gets what, how much. In this one, it says in this JP Morgan one, and they were saying a different group. I don't know what the difference necessarily would be, but it says that they have 25,000 shares and it's worth $417,000. So that comes out to be like $16, $17, which, I like that for a starting price. And this was Nomura's. Oops, I don't even know if I meant to put that in there. Oh, I put the wrong one. Whoops. Anyway, so there's this third-party release, probably to do with that, right? That's, maybe that, I don't know, maybe that had to be in place. But, and so that money, right? But it was done on behalf of Bye Bye Baby, right? So the subsidiary had been, it literally distinctly says it in like the first week, I don't know if it was the first day hearing or just in the first week, that Bye Bye Baby entered bankruptcy as a separate company, right? And so as that separate company, I think the lawsuit was done on behalf of Bye Bye Baby, right? So that means that money is locked up in a trust under the control of Bye Bye Baby, but with like set terms on it, because the subsidiary is going to save the parent company. And so in that process, they don't want to just dole out all the money, right? Because you had these insane claims. You had the Brandon Meadows claim for, whatever, $12 billion or something. So you had, if they would have just let the claims go out, there's a chance that the judge, or not the judge, the plan admin might just be like, yeah, just pay everyone out, whatever, And, but when you like only give it out in increments, then they have to do it right. And there is a process to it, right? They can't, there just is a process to going through, because like people might, there's first lien, second lien. That's why, JP Morgan getting paid out right before bankruptcy was important, is because that put Sixth Street, firmly in that first lien position. So, anyway, like in this process, they had different pots of money, as literally the judge, Judge Papalia said, and that first pot of money was the debtor in possession loan, right? They were able to put up the debtor in possession loan, and if anyone remembers that day when the DIP got approved, the price for Bed Bath skyrocketed. And so that money was used first. Then they collected all the money from, because the debtor in possession, they're they're using that money to reorganize, right? So that money gets injected into the business. It doesn't like necessarily pay creditors. I mean, it also can, but it's like designed to also just help the company exit. Another pot of money is all the money that came from all the wind down sales for Bed Bath & Beyond. So they can say how much was there, whatnot. So in that repayment, as like the waterfall goes, you have to pay the top creditors first, which means paying 6th Street back, right? So they had to be paid back. So they were in this category of top creditors, but they're not the only ones in that category. There was, because when the plan was confirmed, they could earmark money from the trust, this huge pot of money. They could earmark it and say, hey, we're going to give you that, or we're going to give you shares. This is our, it could be, hey, this is our reorganization plan for Bye Bye Baby. We'll give you Bye Bye Baby shares, this many, which will probably be worth this much. Like if it'll come onto the market at $6 and then we give you this many shares, then, you're good. And so, so let's see. Oh yeah. So in that top tier, right? Well, there's all these different, so there was some creditors that slipped through without getting dealt with. And I think it was nefarious, right? It was like literally a San Diego lease that was like managed by Merrill Lynch, right? Which is owned by Bank of America. And you'd think, right, if you had like a, whatever, it's $5,000 a month or $10,000 or something, property, and you didn't have that money coming in for months, you'd probably be talking to someone, right? So I just find it highly unlikely that that they just forgot to talk to the court, talk to the to the debtor in possession, to 6th Street, and get dealt with before the plan was confirmed, because they came literally like the day after, and they're like, oh, shucks and darns, we got missed. And it was just like an honest mistake. But that honest mistake put them in top priority, because now they have a secured claim, and that's not good, right? Because the time to be able to access that first big pot of money in the trust was before the plan was confirmed. So then you had all these store credit claims, and they had canceled the gift card claims because they advertised, hey, we're canceling these. But again, this is why I think it's nefarious. People were like, well, what about store credit? You didn't technically say you canceled that. So it's like, crap. There's all these people who have store credit, and technically that's money. It's not like, anyway. So that store credit also became a top priority. And I think also something to do with the personal injury cases. But anyway, once those didn't go through, in order for 6th Street to do a credit bid, they had to pay, they had to get them out, right? And they can't pay everyone else first. They have to pay everyone kind of equally. So it's like $1 for me, $1 for you, $1 for you, right? And when they do that, well, then the money just like runs out, and they can't do a credit bid, because then the other parties would be in there. And so they try to scrounge around and get some cash by selling some knickknacks and whatever different uncashed checks and all that. And ultimately, some of them got dealt with. I think the store credit issues got dealt with. And I think that the lease, they came to a settlement with them. And that's what gets me excited about the court hearing on the 4th, is that they scheduled that lease to be dealt with, right? They had already made an agreement, like I won't say a tender offer, but basically agreement on what they were going to probably pay them. but they couldn't access the money until they started the waterfall, until Sixth Street could do the credit bid. And like ABC pointed out, today, actually, they don't technically have to do the final decree on all of the subsidiaries in order to do that. They can start paying people out with a waterfall. I think just part of it is they have to they have to be able to pay out those other creditors in order to do a credit bid, and then they can access all that money, which will then, that big pot of money will pay the creditors in their priority, and there should be billions left over for us. So that's really exciting. But all that had to wait a whole year for various reasons. One, because there's some rule about if you canceled your, if you're in bankruptcy and then it went past a certain, to the next fiscal year, and you didn't file or whatever, you end up having to wait a whole extra year. I can't remember. At the last Pulte event, Jake was telling me about it. So there was actually that. But also the out of court settlements, they were called non-preemptory, which is that you can't rush them. And so that was the other thing, is they could just say, "Oh, I'm not ready," and there was no way to necessarily just rush them. Oh yeah, that to add on. Sorry to jump around. To add on to what Jake had said, is that if you went into the next fiscal year, you had to wait. There was a whole 1 year dark period to prove that you weren't just avoiding taxes or something like that. But the other thing is then they keep throwing in these wrenches into everything, which is the IRS thing. And I think that the IRS thing, it's interesting because on one filing, it said that they were, was it 100 billion or was it 10 billion? I think it was 100 billion. Ended up being a typo, I guess, because it didn't show up in other dockets. But it clearly said it in one, that it was $100 billion claim, and it was wait, what the heck? Either way, who knows? Maybe there's 100 billion. I'm not speculating that large. I think there's probably $10 billion in that fund, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a lot more. But so that money in that trust, I think that the IRS was trying to tax it. And I don't know if they were trying to tax it just because it's kind of a weird thing that typically doesn't happen. There's so many new things about this bankruptcy that they don't really, there's not a clear way to say hey, this is how you pay taxes on this money. And I think they were just trying to delay it anyway. We already saw that Trump froze hiring for the IRS, and he created an external revenue service. So who knows? He might just get rid of the internal revenue service or severely cut them down. But they're definitely not on the same team. I'll say that. Vivek talks about the managerial class. Well, that's what they are. All these federal agencies are as managerial classes. And before the Chevron doctrine got struck down, they had kind of limitless power to write laws and everything. So I think the IRS is just being completely weaponized. And I don't know if they were just taxing it just because there wasn't clear precedence on what to do with money that's in a trust, because it's oh, well, you got the money. It's no, the trust got the money. We haven't dealt it out yet. It's just being delivered, but it's delayed in being delivered. So it's we're just delivering it to these people. We're not owning this money because we're not using this money. It's either that is what the IRS case is that's going to be on the hearings on the 4th, or it's the fact that or it's the fact that the 2 years. So the IRS case got pushed back in early January, but on the 13th was the 2-year anniversary of the of the leverage buyout that was on PitchBook. And so if that's the official date of when the 2 years to preserve the net operating losses is, then I think that there's lots of dates that could have been used, but you'd have to argue it. And if you're arguing precedents, and I mean, when you have the IRS has limitless people that they're like, oh, this expert says, right? I think a lot of the, universities are kind of in the same camp as the federal agencies. So it would be kind of hard to say, well, this should be the precedent that as soon as the bond deal was signed in November 2022, we should have been good. But the latest date, I guess, would be the January 13th. So that might be the one they were using. So it might just be they were trying to say, oh, you lost the nulls because, you stopped running Bye Bye Baby as a business or whatever. So they kept it open longer. Anyway, either way, the IRS's case is not valid. It will be dealt with. And the judge knows it will be dealt with because he scheduled that lease after, which all they have to do is be settled out. So that means that he assumes that money is going to be accessible, which is very, very exciting. All right, let's get back to that was a long tangent to say, oh yeah, like why we're waiting, why it still hasn't happened. And I think part of it is like it could have / should have happened if, I don't know, the government wasn't so messed up. It could have easily happened back in November, right? It could have happened a long time. It could happen whenever. But, you can see, if you've been really following it, you can see the people throwing a wrench in it and things getting delayed. I mean, how many times, I don't know if everyone follows Tufel. You should. Tufel Hunden, he's awesome. But he'll post the latest court schedules. And several times it's been like, this is the last hearing, and then suddenly the last hearing gets delayed, right? That's happened a few times. One big one that we were waiting for was for the second cram down. That's when actually the credit cards were dealt with, which, by the way, actually, now that I bring that up, that was quite an interesting so I don't mind all the lines. There's a lot going on there. But this is why I assumed there was going to be a tweet from Roaring Kitty. There's kind of like this box in here, and it was able to come up and test the box when Teddy was going to make Thanksgiving great again, right? So we had everything kind of set up, and I think a lot of things are involved. I think, Elon Musk launching all the satellites, I even calculated when he was going to have enough satellites to launch Starlink, right? And that came up right before Thanksgiving. And right before Thanksgiving, the second cram down was approved, right? Well, then, I can't remember what case came up then that kind of delayed it. It's been so long, which is also the other thing I thought of when I saw Roaring Kitty's tweet was like, yes, it has been, I feel like that dog. But, so then we saw the customer service. Oh yeah. Well, then it seemed that everything was lined up for things to be good by the end of the year, possibly by Christmas, but for sure by the end of the year. And GameStop started going up. And I think they're correlated because I think GameStop is buying Bye Bye Baby. And I think that's part of the reason they have all the cash is either one, to guarantee all the creditors. They're saying look, we're going to guarantee this. I think that maybe Carl Icahn was guaranteeing it with his shares, but then it had to switch to GameStop, and so they needed to raise. Anyway, all I know is I'm pretty sure it's GameStop buying it. And, so the people in the know, right, they know when these things are going to go through, because it's hard to keep a secret that's this big. And so, the price starts going up. I mean, it went up. I mean, what would be the reason why it started running before Thanksgiving or before Christmas? I mean, we got all the way up to almost $35, right, per share, which is pretty high. So then we had the customer service tweet from Ryan Cohen, which definitely seems like some communication saying like, hey, I think the FCC was trying to stop things with, claiming it was an antitrust thing, or just being lazy because apparently government workers don't really work between Thanksgiving and New Year's. They just kind of, like we've seen, like Elon Musk has been pointing out, like they're not even in the office, right? Like that, they probably wouldn't even know like whose job it is to sign off, and especially if you had all these, like there's like administrative law judges and all these different people. There's enough kind of like ambiguity on whose role it is that they could kind of just, it's kind of like when you call with customer service thing, and then they pass you to someone else, and like, oh, that's really this other person that they deal with it, and then you get to the the end, and then they tell you to, then they transfer you to the first person. And you're like, bro, like that's where I started. Like someone's got to deal with this, but just no one wants to deal with it, and especially if there's some like administrative law judges or whoever in there trying to kind of throw a wrench in things. So that and I don't know. Like even just the culture of it. When Tendi and I ended up talking to this, he wasn't a senator, anyway, Congresswoman, her legal team, right? He's like, well, I'm not really promising anything because like we're probably not going to do much until the new year, until we know who the president is. And so probably he's like, even if we did something, Congress wouldn't, they wouldn't push it through. But right after that, he did end up suing BlackRock. So that seems like a huge win. Anyway, so then we had this drop. Why do we have this drop here at the beginning of the year? I think it was just because if February 4th was the date that it had to be waiting for, it's like that's kind of a long period. And what I've realized about the market is they really don't like hedge long term. Like to them, like, oh yeah, like a whole month, like, yeah, I'd rather short this for a whole month and who knows, whatever, like, and use that money elsewhere rather than just like hedge and prepare for it. So that, and like also, a lot of just the share price, I think, is just determined by the option chain. And so at some point it just kind of prices out, like if you don't get that catalyst date, then the option chain alone just gets too expensive to maintain that gamma ramp. That's why it's a ramp, not like a gamma like block, right? Is it's either ramping up or ramping down. It can't just stay even. That'd be too hard to do. But yeah, so I was expecting, because it dropped below this kind of line where you can see there's quite a bit going on all the way since the last two run-ups, really. And now it's dipped below it. So I figured, the IVs were making options cheaper and everything, and the court date's coming up. So I was just thinking that we were going to get some feedback from Ryan Cohen or from Roaring Kitty, and looks like we did get feedback from Roaring Kitty. So that is awesome. Let's see. Here's sorry to skip around a lot. It's kind of weird to not necessarily have any sort of feedback. I hope anyway, I guess it just is what it is. Something that's kind of, actually, so anyone in the chat can tell me, did the audio work for the first one? I don't know if that is working, but I kind of want to play what happened before the scene for Roaring Kitty, just to get a little context.
Okay, let's clone us some dog.
Yeah! Very well. Let this abomination unto the Lord begin. Interesting. It seems Seymour died at the ripe old age of 15. 15? You mean He lived for 12 more years after I got frozen?
Indeed.
Stop the cloning. Oh, sure. Smash the smart guy's machine.
Fry, what's wrong?
Think about it. Seymour lived a full life after I was gone. He probably even added new songs to his repertoire.
But that's a good thing. Walking on sunshine sucks noodles.
I had Seymour till he was 3. That's when I knew him, and that's when I loved him. I'll never forget him. But he forgot me a long, long time ago.
Whoa, and that's actually crazy. It says January, right? So something I just realized, I was going to say something else about this, but, you know, the idea of a requel. Well, this is actually really exciting. So what would the requel entail? It would entail the algo doing what the algo does, right? And if we see here, he smashes the machine, right? And so if we move to blockchain, well, there wouldn't be an algo. There wouldn't be a requel. It's like, you know, I mean, it would still. Anyway, there's just something that popped into my head. Possibly that's a thing. I mean, maybe we're going to T0 and maybe, you know, the Fireblocks thing, whatever. And yeah, maybe it's not going to be the same sort of algo. It's just up. It just literally just is just going to go to where the point where the first person sells, which will probably be pretty high. Yeah. And probably just go straight up even then. I mean, with the first person sells, I mean, it'd be to the point where the buyers stop. I mean, the CAT system is in place, right? I think people will actually get margin call. They won't be able to fake it. They can't have fake junk bond, fake crypto margin preventing them from getting margin call. They're like, oh, I have tons of margins. Like, no, you didn't. You don't. I mean, even we've been seeing, you know, JP Morgan. We've been seeing, you know, what is it? Citadel. We've been seeing even Virtu. They're all getting, they're all selling bonds to get cash, right? So why are they getting cash? And it's probably because they're going to need it because they have all these shares sold, not yet repurchased. So I think they will actually get margin called. Also, I do think that possibly the money from FTX, like it was $15 billion and only $5 billion was given to people with less than $50,000 in, as a claim. So I think that the rest would be institutions, and those institutions need that money to start paying out their short position to things like GameStop. So I think it all goes together. There's a chance with this that another thing that's made me think of is just that the idea of Chewy. And I don't know, what if Roaring Kitty is following the same pathway as Ryan Cohen, where he's like, oh, I tried to do it just the normal way. I bought shares. Because if you look at what a poison pill is, it's when they do share buybacks to make it prohibitively expensive to buy the whole company, right? And because, like, say you have certain holders that aren't going to sell, that don't want you to sell, like the executives or whatever, the more share buybacks you do, the more power it retains for those executives or whoever the main, you know, institution that of interest for the company. And so it's like they could just not sell, and then you just couldn't get more than 50%. And if you think about like why Chewy did share buybacks, I mean, it is kind of weird. So definitely not trying to spread FUD, but I mean, there is a chance because Roaring Kitty did sell that. I mean, maybe he's then going to have to take a bond position and who knows what else. I'm not really sure. But if you look at the board members, like, it doesn't look like the exact people that Ryan Cohen would be working with, right? Like, it'd take me a while to find the DD I did, but I mean, I looked up, the CEO and different people, and they were definitely some Boston Consulting Group type people. So I don't know. I just there's definitely a chance that. I mean, I think it was kind of obvious. The more I look back, especially when I've been looking at the Sultan of Qatar, of his stuff, I've been seeing that like he's been gearing up for this for years. Let's see if I can find the tweet. Man, I tweet a lot. It's like a funny. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Okay. So doesn't this seem up Ryan Cohen's alley, right? You have purpose is the most important, and then people, product, and then profit. And I mean, that was 2020, May 2026, right? So, I mean, this is like when Roaring Kitty is starting or doing his stream. I don't know even when he started, but I mean, then so there's that happening all the way back then, and then you see, he's saying, FIFA World Cup, any synergy with GameStop, right? Totally jumping around. Someone pointed out that on May 22nd, it was announced that EA and FIFA's partnership of 30 years would come to an end upon the termination of their license agreement, right? Making FIFA 23 the last entry to the franchise under the FIFA name. So I don't know if it was the last FIFA Cup was in Qatar. And so, I mean, I think there really is big things coming. Anyway, so all this has been in the works for a long time. Just totally got jumbled around with where I was going with all this. Let's see. More. Wow. I mean, definitely exciting stuff. I mean, you look at Qatar is the fourth richest company in the world, and yeah, I there's a lot of things I'm not sure what all to get into. I mean, one thing I think the question of with the AI, because we are going to get back to the AI thing, which was the original kind of intention of this before a small tangent on Bed Bath happened. Like I don't want to go too crazy on things, but I mean, there's a lot of like important questions that probably should be asked. I mean, they just talked about, Sam Altman just said that that AGI, advanced, what is it even called? Anyway, basically like super intelligent computer able to do everything, is possible in a very short time. And that's kind of terrifying, right? Especially when you have now kind of like these universal vaccine passports that now have everyone's data. Also, people think it's kind of crazy to say, to talk about Epstein, but literally the CEO of Google is still missing from the Epstein case, right? Which is kind of weird. And so in that, so Larry Page of Google is he's still missing, right? But then there's Sergey Brin, Well, this is his. Was this his? So 23andMe, right? There was some definite like corruption happening there, and anyway, like when you look at I think Sergey Brin's married to the CEO of YouTube, and then this is her sister. Anyway, I mean, you look at all the different kind of players, right? Like, and kind of hate to bring this up because I know a lot of people, dislike it. So, I mean, I guess if you're only here for, an update on Bed Bath, you might want to peace out. But, where did Kamala Harris come from, right? It's kind of a interesting question. And, Kamala Harris kind of swept under the rug some child abuse stuff from some Jesuit priests in California. And the Jesuits are like really, because they've always been an intelligence agency. They were the intelligence agency for the Pope. They are very invested in like knowing who everyone is. And that started because basically when in the Crusades, right, there was this, what were they called? I just forgot what it was called. Anyway, so it wasn't the Knights Templar, it was another group, Hospitality something. Ooh, Teutonic. The Teutonic Order, I guess is what it's called. They went into Germany, that whole kind of area, and they kept trying to kind of establish things, but all the pagans or whatever in Poland just kept beating them, right? And so eventually they just left, and they came back. So they got beaten in like 1400, like the beginning of 1400, I think, and then in the beginning of 1500 was when the Jesuit order started, and that was a way saying like, hey, it's not really possible anymore to just take things by force. Now we have to use soft power. And so it was like literally the art of soft power to infiltrate, to get a stronghold through education, and like literally plant long seeds of kind of ideas to shape people. So anyway, part of that, infiltration is knowing who all is there, right? So it's like, instead of just like, oh, we're going, we'll just kill everyone that doesn't want to, agree with us. It's like, okay, well, we have to know everyone, see who we can switch to our side and all of that. And, so just that idea of keeping tabs on everyone. I mean, I'm not saying that, I mean, that's kind of what confessionals were, right? Like you come in and you confess, and, so it's like, you kind of have this network of all this information, and it's kind of convenient, right? And so Nancy Pelosi is a Jesuit, right? And so is Governor Newsom, right? And so I mean, so is Hunter Biden, right? So I don't know. I mean, there's definitely something there as far as with the data, and maybe we should watch. Well, actually, it's kind of long to watch the actual with Trump. I mean,
thank you. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it just so happened to be 14 minutes and 17 seconds though. So I mean that's kind of trippy, especially since it just totally cuts him off at the end. But that was one thing that they were saying is, oh, hey, this AI is going to be able to help all these people with their medical stuff, right? But that means like knowing everything about you, all your weaknesses, everything, and like who your potential loyalties are. I mean, that's why I like seeing who's connected to who, is because it's like you end up not being shocked by what you end up finding. It's like, oh, what do you know? Like, people are just connected. So I don't know, it's just scary. Like I'm really excited about AI. And one thing is that I'm not sure why I don't know, actually really don't know why they would need AI to do some of the things they're saying that they would do. I mean, anyway, I feel like they just don't understand the science, so they think like AI is just the answer. But one thing actually, now that I'm like thinking about it, is just FYI, I've heard a lot of people say like the I will not comply thing, like if they try to do their virus thing, like I'm not going to listen. Not saying anyone should listen to anyone, but just FYI, like, is very easy to make a virus that could be very lethal. So, I mean, like, if I was you, I'd just watch what the people that are probably perpetuating the crime are doing, because if they're bunkered down, it might be a real one, which I wouldn't doubt that there's some sick people out there that have a whole arsenal of viruses they could just unleash. I remember all the way back in, what was this, like 2012 or something? Anyway, I remember like when the Ebola thing came out, and I'm like, Ebola? Like it wasn't just like Ebola. There was, anyway, it's in this like category of viruses that are really easy to genetically engineer. Like literally there's like, well, two in this category. One is fully engineered. And so I was like, I think it's actually just that virus. It's probably not actual. It's an Ebola virus, but it's this specific version, which is like a vehicle for, and I kind of like, I thought about it back then, but I was like, nah, that's crazy, man. Like there'd be someone that would stop that, because that's literally insane to create like a bioweapon and then just unleash it, And now I'm like, I mean, yeah, like, it does seem like the solution usually is genocide, what people do. And so, yeah, it does pretty effectively get the job done. So I think they've been doing it for a while, which is terrifying. And it's terrifying because, if you were going to make a nuclear bomb, I mean, first off, you just couldn't, right? Because, I mean, you'd have to like, you have to like concentrate enough like radioactive uranium, like nuclear grade, weapons grade uranium, and then you have to like have all of these explosions like on it at the exact same time to like the millionth of a second or something crazy, right? So just like building the detonator device for it would be, near impossible without like a lot of money and a lot of equipment. But like, even, I guess, also just collecting enough uranium, right? You have to mine it, right? So it's not like you could just do it in the dark. I mean, they can see around the world where people are mining uranium. I mean, geologists already know where big deposits are and stuff. And so you can see, hey, this country, this person is mining uranium, and it's like, oh, that was actually one of the things that Netanyahu said was like, oh, they can have these kind of centrifuges to separate out the heavier uranium. They're like, oh, they have ones that are the size of like a washing machine or whatever that can fit in your house, and they can do this in your house. I think that's kind of a stretch. I mean, who knows? Maybe they did, but it still would take a long, long time. I mean, it's like gold mining, right? When gold's just like heavier than sand. So I mean, I grew up in kind of gold rush kind of area, so I've gold mined before. It's not. Anyway, separating something out by weight is and the difference in weight between like sand and gold is a lot. It's a lot less for uranium, the heavier version of uranium, right? So it would be a lot of spinning down and all that. So it'd take like a long, long time to get enough uranium to make a nuclear bomb. It'd also be just really hard to detonate it. Like, if I were to make my own virus, right? I don't know. I mean, like, I think like a PCR machine, for polymerase chain reaction, like, I don't know. Like, I think they're pretty cheap, like tens of thousands of dollars, maybe. Like, I haven't looked it up, but I know it's definitely less than like $100,000, unless you get like some really nice one that's like automatically just like a 3D printer, but just, I mean, they already are kind of that, but I guess there's different more manual versus automated. But either way, those could definitely be in your own house. You definitely could design a virus and print it out And then it's just a matter of, trying to build enough of it and find a good way to spread it. But I mean, that's terrifying, right? There could be people all over, building viruses that we don't know. I mean, literally in someone's apartment. And so I don't know. I think that is something we definitely should take seriously. I mean, yeah. Anyway, so just saying with like, I think people get caught up in like I don't want to comply because these people are bad. But you also have to remember, like, these people are bad and they're doing bad things, right? Like the technology exists for them to actually hurt people. So I think more importantly, more than like not complying, it's like we should really figure out who has these biolabs and why, and stopping them, because I really don't see a point in having gain of function. I mean, they transform bacteria and yeast and, who knows, maybe even viruses, right, to do things. But, I don't know. It just shouldn't be. It should be definitely monitored, because that's. I mean, we 2020. We saw what it can do. I mean, people did die. I know 2 people who died. So I mean, it's unless. I mean, anyway, I think there's a lot more to it. But I just think like technology is getting to the point where a few people can do a lot of harm, right? I mean, we are going to have robots all over. I mean, already if someone thinks that they're a good enough shot to beat, a dozen, quadricopters with, AI powered guns on it, you're wrong. You will lose. You might get one. You're not going to get more than one. So, I mean, we kind of have to figure out like who's in charge of these things. What are they doing? And when the people involved are like those people, that's absolutely terrifying. I mean, that's what I don't get is I don't get Sam Altman being there because Elon Musk dislikes him so much, or at least says he dislikes him so much. So I don't know if this is a thing where because Trump's appointees aren't technically confirmed by the Senate, so maybe he's not really protected by the FBI or the CIA yet. And so I don't really know. I mean, someone said, it's like, I don't know if it's a Trump quote or something that's like, you have to expose them first, and, so give them a platform so they can say what they're doing. I don't know. I mean, hopefully it is waking people up. I mean, we should at least be asking questions. Very sussed out by these 3 people, right? I didn't know much about the SoftBank CEO. Let's see, but I mean, there's some weird stuff. I mean, just looking at, so he went to the University of Berkeley, and I'm not just going to blanketly say whoever's gone to the University of Berkeley is bad. But it is, something to kind of think about, the fact that, like, so if someone's saying, well, that's kind of meaningless, right? Then you got to ask yourself, like, do you know what the Safari Club is, right? This isn't just a random Wikipedia article, right? If you want to know more, I highly recommend Whitney Webb's book, like One Nation Under Blackmail. But the reason I think these things are important is because, like, when you actually follow the money, you find out there's some really, really weird stuff going on. And it's like, it's not speculation. I mean, literally, for the Iran-Contra affair, they were dragged into the Senate, right? And they provide the evidence, say, hey, look, the CIA is selling drugs to, or they're selling guns, for drugs, and then selling the drugs here. that's super messed up, right? And they did that all so they could have their own bank account, so the Senate didn't have to confirm their budget and didn't have to know what they were doing, right? I mean, that's not like a speculation, not like a conspiracy theory. It's literally just what happened. And so I highly recommend looking into what just like the Safari Club is, but just like for a little overview, the Safari Club was a covert alliance of intelligence services formed in 1976. Okay. I mean, that sounds a little sus, right? That ran clandestine operations around Africa at the time when the United States Congress had limited the power of the CIA after years of abuses and when Portugal was dismantling its colonial empire in Africa, right? So Portugal is like, oh yeah, we gotta stop doing this whole like slavery thing and stuff. And so intelligence agencies are like, hey, there's a power vacuum and we can like take advantage of that, right? And we just got in trouble, right? So this is just after Iran-Contra. So Iran-Contra like clamped down on these bad things they're doing. So what do? They're like, well, we're just gonna get together and do it even more because no one cared, right? Like literally, no one cared that the Iran-Contra happened, right? So I think it just emboldened them. Plus, it's like you have, back to I guess the Berkeley thing, the Manhattan Project, right? They had the nuke, right? They had the Trump card. And when you just look at all the different people that went to Berkeley, I mean, even that's where a lot of like Kamala Harris's parents both worked there. And, what do you know? Then Kamala's mom takes Kamala up to literally go work for the Bronfman's University, right? Is that kind of random? Like if you were in Berkeley to just get a job in Toronto, right? And then what do you know? Like the Bronfmans then sponsor you to run for office. Like kind of weird. I mean, like it's not like, it's not just like a huge leap. It's like you can follow the money. Like who was the one who, people would say, oh, these are crazy, leaps in logic, right? But who was the one who actually asked Obama to run, right? Well, it was the Pritzker family, right? Who's part of the mob, right? Who's friends with the Bronfmans, right? So it's kind of a big deal, right? And also as far as these intelligence agencies go, the Bronfmans were sponsoring this sex cult called Nexium, right? And it wasn't just like a few people or whatever. Like it was huge. Like Hollywood stars were part of it, endorsing it, and even like the president of Mexico was part of it, right? So when you think about the reach, right, like, and you think about like the Iran-Contra and like how, I mean, it wasn't like, it was like all of like South America. It really wasn't just, certain countries, right? It like Mexico was a big part of that, especially their president. So anyway, they're all working together, and it just seems that when this kind of stuff happened, it just went to a whole nother level, and it should be looked into because hopefully it's being addressed. I mean, it got so bad. I mean, actually, I don't know. Did they actually release the JFK files? They were supposed to release that today. All right. So it's formal members, right? Who formally were part of this, like everyone knows, was Iran, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Morocco, and France, right? Well, anyway, the Iranian Revolution, that's an interesting one. That's kind of like a longer story. But also, like, people will give me crap about bringing up the fact that Kamala Harris and P. Diddy were part of the same fraternity / sorority, right? The Boulay. But that came out of France, right? That originated in Africa when the Corsican mafia in France ended up basically teaming up with all the colonial empires and all the unions and whatnot, and use them to then get rid of the get rid of the, it was an emperor at the time. Shoot. Forgetting what the original French, anyway, getting rid of the French government, right? That happened in 1943. So the idea that France is here is not a shocker, especially when you look at the history of France trying to take the Suez Canal. It's like over and over again, right? I mean, ever since it was literally built, actually. And they used the Rothschilds to do that. And then they ended up taking it anyway, starting in 2000, kind of between 2005 and 2014, right? Like the ESG, like the carbon credits had kind of taken over so much that they could still tax it the way they wanted to. So they didn't necessarily need to control it because they could tax it through ESG, and then they could funnel that money through the Caribbean into their own pockets, right? You look at all the people involved in putting that into law, right? They're all part of Skull and Bones, right? Why else would, I mean, it just like blows my mind that some people don't see the connections, right? When you have like George Bush endorsing Kamala Harris, like, isn't that weird? Like I don't know why that's not more weird to people, right? You know, or John Kerry, you know, being part of a very small group of people, right? Skull and Bones with George Bush, but it's like they had the same mission, right? So anyway, you have Iran. I guess I could go into. Well, it was one of the first coups that the CIA did, right? Like, I think it was their first one actually, was to take Iran because of the oil, right? They needed that liquid gold to finance things. Plus, it's something that you can, like, the evidence is gone, right? You ship it, you trade it for whatever money, whatever, and then it's gone, right? Let's see. Oh yeah, and then so Saudi Arabia, right, at the time. So this group was started by a guy named Anand Khashoggi, right? Which, if you know what Joe Biden was trying to use against Mohammed bin Salman, is he was saying like, oh, you killed this like journalist, right? Which was something Khashoggi. I can't remember what his first name is, right? But he was part of the mob, right? Like his dad or whatever was like literally the one running the safari club. And so, you know, this group controlled the weapons, everything, the flow of everything important, you know, sex trafficking, you name it, they controlled it all. So, you know, it wasn't that he was just a journalist. You know, that'd be crazy, right? But people don't know. I mean, like, I remember seeing that on the news and I'm thinking like, oh, oh, maybe that is a little sus, right? But you just gotta kind of look in things. And then it says, the group maintained informal connections with the United States, South Africa, Rhodesia, and Israel, right? The group executed a successful military intervention in Zaire, right? The freak? Like, doing a coup, like just this group, right? It's just a clandestine, a group, a covert group of people doing clandestine operations. Like, that's just super, super sus. In response to an invasion from Angola, it also provided arms to Somalia during the Ogaden War. It organized secret diplomacy relating to anti-communism in Africa, and has been credited with initiating the process resulting in the 1979 Egypt-Israel peace treaty, right? So as much as like I'm not a fan of communism, right? The thing is that, you know, in capitalism you can buy out people and that's what they want is, you know, you have a central banker who can print money, and then you have people you can buy out so that you can just start controlling everything, right? Sorry, I got off so many tangents, but like you look at like just the history of, I just posted, yesterday, I watched a documentary on the history of the central bank in Japan. And they like realized, they're like, hey, like our people work really hard. They're like really productive. And we can just kind of print money. And, as long as we're exporting a lot of stuff, we can just keep printing money. And it just completely destroyed their housing market. Everything. It all came crashing down. And it's also kind of coincidental that, that all, anyway, there's a lot there. I don't even know what, what all to go into, but yeah, the Safari Club takes its name reportedly, let's see, after the exclusive resort in Kenya where the group first met. The club was operated by Saudi arms dealer Anand Khashoggi, also a friend of Anand's, right? The creation of the Safari Club coincided with the consolidation of the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, BCCI. The BCCI served to launder money, particularly for Saudi Arabia and the United States, whose CIA director, George H.W. Bush, had a personal account. So I've been very confused about the United States relationship with Pakistan. It has been very weird to me to try to figure that out. And then when I read this, I was like, oh, that's where they were doing their money laundering. And, funny kind of side story, right? So I had a vending machine business, and at the middle school, the kids were just so hard on the machines. I was like, it's just faster if I just go to school during their lunch. I'll make more money if I just like hand out drinks. So I had a little card reader and just swipe. It was also just, anyway, it was, so I also do like make deals. I was like, hey, you tell me something that inspires me and I'll give you a free drink. And I actually was like definitely surprised on the amount of things. I was like, hey, tell me an idea your idea to change the world. And if I think it's good, I had some great ideas. Anyway, so there was, I had a kid come up and he's like, hey, do you take other currencies? I'm like, sure. And he's like, will you take these rupees? And I'm like, yeah. I'm thinking like, one of the up and coming economies is like, India. And if you're from India, you already know where this is headed, right? So I'm like, sure. And so as soon as I said, okay, the next day I had a line of Indian kids really long, and they're like, just like, here's, take these rupees, right? So anyway, I had a fat stack of rupees. So later that week or that day or whenever, I went to the bank and I was like, oh, like, can you guys exchange these for me? And they're like, what is it? And I was like, it's a rupee. And they're like, oh, okay. And they're like, it's not in here. And I was like, or no, they asked me, they're like, is it like this? And I was like, no, like some random is like also called a rupee, but like from some random small country. And they're like, yeah, it's not in here. And I was like, that's weird. Like they even like showed me the list, and there's like a long list, and rupees was not in there. I'm like, how is that even possible? So then I like look it up, and it turns out that there was a lot of counterfeiting of rupees in Pakistan, Indian rupees in Pakistan. And so what the Indian government did was they just basically made it to where you had to come in person and exchange your old rupees for new rupees, so they get rid of all these counterfeits. And it makes sense that, now knowing the CIA, that was like their main spot, right? They're the ones who were doing it, and I wondered, I was like, because, sometimes I watch some like Indian news and different stuff, just because it's like, fascinating to see a country that's going to become really powerful, right? And like, you know, and then watching different videos and stuff and like seeing like what their thoughts on America was. And I can't remember who I was talking to, someone, and they're like, well, we've just always had a good relationship with Russia as opposed to the U.S. And I'm like thinking like, that's weird. Like, but now it's like, oh, well, if basically like, you know, this our CIA is in Pakistan counterfeiting Indian currency. I mean, that's pretty messed up. So, yeah. Anyway, there's like, you know, despite all the visa kind of drama, which, you know, I don't know specifically how I feel about that. But one thing's for sure is we definitely need to fix our relationship with India because I feel like they could be a great friend. And man, we've really, like, our country has gone around and done some pretty douchey things. So, yeah, see, the United States was not a formal member of the group, but was involved to some degree, particularly through its Central Intelligence Agency. Henry Kissinger is credited with the American strategy of supporting the Safari Club implicitly. Okay? Like, how is that not crazy? I mean, to have a completely rogue agency that has connections to top secret information, and like, it's just like, I just don't know why that doesn't, you know, I get it that some people go really far with the conspiracies and speculation and whatnot, but just like the basic stuff is just like terrifying to me, right? So see, allowing it to fulfill American objectives by proxy without risking direct responsibility. Like, what? Right? So it's like you can cause a mess and then we can't be blamed for it. That's really weird, right? So, you know, I really think the bar is pretty low for America to do better in its foreign policy, and I really hope they do. Just because that's messed up, right? Like, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like there should be standards, like, you know, kind of like, you know, we have a U.S. Constitution. That's fine if you don't give the whole world those same rights, but like, I don't know, man. We should have at least some bounds because, like, you just can't piss off the whole world. You know, I mean, a lot of these people, you know, that did this, you know, George H.W. Bush and whatnot, like, they're dead, right? So, hey, they don't care. They just caused this huge mess. Like, they don't care that, like, now it's going to be really hard for the rest of the world to not trust us, right? I mean, my thoughts on Iran, right? Like, I was pretty confused. That's a huge side. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're here, you love me, and you're interested. I don't know, but like, the whole Israel-Iran thing has been really confusing to me. And just because, like, as I started learning the history, I was like, well, I don't know. We kind of really did some douchey stuff in Iran. And so it makes sense why they would have such a polarizing response to that. But then, you know, recently when I've been looking at it, I'm like, I didn't realize that Iran doesn't actually have any treaty with any country, right? Like, they don't have any sort of Article 5, like, hey, if we get attacked, like, you'll come and save us, right? Like, no one, right? I mean, you know, Russia, you know, and China, they have a no limits partnership, right? Like, they will come to save each other. And, I mean, you know, everyone's part of different groups, right? Like, we're part of what's the one? With India and Australia. Anyway, there's all these different partnerships, right? And so it is kind of weird, you know, that Iran doesn't have any friends. I don't know. I think they could be a great country. I know a lot of really cool Iranians here. Whenever I'm in, like, the sauna, like, it's usually all my Ukrainian and Russian and and Persian homies, right? And I'm like the only white guy. But yeah, so I don't know. I think that it's I don't know, in that situation, I think it's like the reason I bring it up, even though like I feel like it's a lose-lose situation, because like if I'm pointing out what I don't like about both sides, I feel like then both sides are just going to hate me. But I think it's just kind of important to know because, you know, when I was really looking into like kind of Hamas, because I was like, wait, why was Iran sending Hamas weapons if Hamas is Muslim Brotherhood, which, you know, is a different, completely religious sect than Iran? I mean, Hamas even speaks a different language. They don't even want, you know, Iran speaks Farsi, you know, Hamas, you know, and Hezbollah. I mean, they speak Arabic, right? Those are not the same language, like not really even that close, to be honest. So like, I was like, why would they be friends? And then I realized, well, you know, the Muslim Brotherhood was started in Egypt in response to the Rothschilds stealing the Suez Canal. And they stole it kind of in conjunction with Israel, right? Like if you look at why, you know, the 6-Day War, the Yom Kippur War, right? Like all this like ends up being like Israel taking Suez Canal, and then France and England running it, right? So I don't know. I mean, like it's like hard to take a side on that because it's just, I don't know. I mean, I'm not for the Marxists in, you know, in England and France, you know, using their proxy Israel at the time. You know, that's messed up, right? But I also don't want to see, I don't know. I mean, I don't know the Muslim Brotherhood that well, but it didn't seem like a group I'd want to like endorse either. So, you know, it's just kind of weird. Well, then you had the Arab Spring in like 2011, I think. And that just totally weakened the Muslim Brotherhood. And before I forget, just, you know, the only other place that they went after the Arab Spring, the Muslim Brotherhood did, was they retreated to Qatar, right? So I'm going to kind of bring this around full circle because this all is connected. But Qatar in like 2022 kind of officially kicked out a lot of the leadership of the Muslim Brotherhood. They're still very religious, right? But there was kind of a difference. The Muslim Brotherhood was just like hell-bent on being anti-Israel. Like it wasn't so much that they were like Muslims or Muslim fundamentalists. It was they were anti-Israelites, which, yeah, that's, I mean, you should build alignment on what your goals are, or like what you believe in, not what you don't like, because otherwise you end up with strange bedfellows. So I don't think it's a coincidence that, you know, Qatar, the fourth richest country, which has a long history with all sorts of global finance things, because they were like the first ones of the Middle East for England to like to drill oil and whatnot. So anyway, they've had money for a long time and being connected. It's actually kind of weird they're connected to England. Anyway, lots of stuff there, right? But I think that it's significant seeing Ryan Cohen with the Sultan of Qatar because, you know, I think that they are healing those relationships. I think that what's happening is that, you know, the conservative people in Israel are hooking up with the reasonable people, you know, in the Middle East, right? And that partnership is going to be awesome, right? Because, you know, I don't know. I mean, the Muslim Brotherhood started in like 1850 or something, right? But I mean, I think it like really took like it really took off in like the like World War I kind of time. But so that was kind of the weird part. Kind of go back to Hamas, right? Is that Hamas, when the Arab Spring happened in 2011, and you know, basically the Muslim Brotherhood kind of got, well, they got kicked out of power, but also like kind of just kicked out. I think that so then that cut off all the funding for Hamas in Gaza and for Hezbollah in Lebanon, right? And this group, might actually say it in here somewhere, that they would meet in Lebanon. There was a huge there's a huge casino in Lebanon, in Beirut, and that's where they would all meet, right? So was like kind of, I guess, the headquarters of the world mob. And so it's not a shock then to see, Hezbollah coming from there, and Hamas. And so once their funding got cut off, they needed someone. And since their only kind of stance was that they hate Israel, well, they had to like warm up to the only other people that just their only stance was that they hated Israel, which was the Ayatollah in Iran. And so I don't know. I mean, when you look at like that, it's like that is the context of that kind of makes the situation more understandable. I still think that it could have been handled a lot better. And I mean, this had to have been seen a long way off. So I definitely not letting anyone off the hook. But it, I don't know, there just has been this power shift. And I think there will be a power shift in Iran, because like I now, especially with Qatar, like I think it's going to be like very healing for the whole area, because Qatar's a really nice place, right? you look at it, there's like no crime, it's very well off. I mean, Saudi Arabia is really nice, you got Dubai, everything, right? So I think that they're kind of showing, it's like, hey, look, if we all just play nice with each other, instead of keep trying to take other people's stuff, if we just like focus on what we can build and export and whatnot, like we'll all just be better off. And so I think that's like mentality is taking off. I think it was hard to get everyone on the same page, but technology has made it easier. And I think all the people that were perpetuating it kind of like are either dead now or like almost dead. And like it was just kind of like an opportunity when the old guard was being refreshed with new recruits, like P. Diddy, and to kind of jump in and stop it. So I don't know. War is still definitely ugly, and everyone should do way better. But I am actually very optimistic of what I see happening. Also, just the fact that this kind of this secret group, and this is just so messed up. It's just so. Yeah, seriously, if you haven't read Whitney Webb's book One Nation Under Blackmail, like please do. It's so good. All right, let's see. I don't even know what else. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, did we get into Stargate as much? No, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure if I want to just anyway, I appreciate you all. I do think a lot of things are happening fast. I think that we need we need all of Trump's picks to be confirmed. Hopefully these people that this whole Stargate thing, hopefully that's not actually happening. Man, I am just really, really scared about that. I mean, it's like, I just like, even just like, I mean, I definitely watched that video that they sent, or that they did. And just to hear these three kind of people talk about like what AI can do and mRNA, and it's like, I just think that they fundamentally have no idea, even just the relative size of like an mRNA vaccine. Like, how big is that? Just like one molecule of it versus like one molecule of like aspirin, right? I think they like, in some people's minds, they might think it's like, oh, it's like the same. It's like, no, like one is huge, right? So you can't like just put it in a cell, right? You're gonna have to like put it in there through with a virus or something. I mean, like, it's not like this, like it's not just like a 3D printer where you just like, and there's no way to know the side effects. They're like, yeah, we can just print this stuff out. We can cure cancer in 48 hours, right? And that's also just not how cancer works. I mean, every cancer is different, and I mean, that's the other thing, right? Just like, so it's one thing to have a gene that's bad, right? So just everyone's always like, oh, like cure cancer, right? That's just like a saying that people love to hear. Sounds dumb to anyone that knows like the biochemistry behind it, because there's different levels of who you are, right? There's what your DNA says, right? You could have a specific gene that says something, right? That's leads to uncontrolled growth. And that'd be a cancer gene, an oncogene, right? And yes, you could. But then, even then, right, you can't, like, how would you stop that? You'd have to do like an HIV virus. Like, you'd have to infect someone like AIDS and literally have the AIDS go through and swap the gene, right? Yeah, no. Yeah, like that's insane, right? I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe someday, right? But definitely want to see that tested on rabbits and everything, like way long before they start trying to even think about putting that in a human, right? Because that it's not that simple, right? Because who you are, to a large degree, has nothing to do with that first level, but there's a second level of who you are, which is your epigenetics, right? That's like which genes are turned on and which genes are turned off. So your DNA, the reason that it's like mathematically impossible for us to have just spontaneously come into existence is because things break, right? There's something called a dissociation constant, right? That's just like how often things just fall apart. And DNA is a lot of really high entropy, high enthalpy, like very complex molecules that would be unstable. And so they would break, right? So it just is mathematically impossible for a chain long enough of nucleotides to just happen to have the genes. Some scientists say you need at least 200 genes to replicate yourself, right? And if you were just like the most basic whatever, so to have 200 genes, each one like at least thousands of nucleotides long. And then you would also need to express that into protein, which anyway, so there's like a lot, right? There's a lot of ways that just like mathematically just doesn't come out. But the thing is that things fall apart. And so what your body does is it has these things called histones. And so it'll wrap your DNA around these histones and it'll put like a pin in it just to hold it there so it doesn't get eaten up, because your body actually has enzymes that go around and just eat DNA, because like it knows viruses exist and all that kind of stuff. So it's like going around looking and eating whatever's not like, it's kind of like, your mom when you're little and she's like, if you don't clean your room, I'm going to go through with the trash bag and throw away everything that's not in its place, right? Well, that's what your body does. It goes through the trash bag and it throws everything away that's not in its place, right? So your DNA most of the time is wrapped around those histones, or it can be actually pinned against the wall. And it's like pinned, kind of big deal. Like it's methylated. It's, it's a covalent bond covalent carbon bond, right? It's it's not coming off there without like the right enzyme to pull it off there, right? So I just don't know, like if they were, plus DNA is really long, right? So you're gonna put in like this virus, which already like, so you're gonna try not to kill the cell, but you're gonna try and replicate, like, yeah, I just don't, I just have no idea how they would do that without like if you were a science fiction writer and you were writing to an audience that didn't understand it, like, okay, cool, yeah, you can write about, ooh, we're gonna change your DNA with an AIDS virus, but like it just like, I don't know, I just find it highly unlikely. I mean, if it goes in specifically, it's a tumor that has a spontaneous mutation. Okay, sure, right, but that's not all. That's not all the cancers, right? Because the thing is that certain genes can be that were supposed to be methylated. They're supposed to be tied up. Some of them are when a cell determines who it is, like it can like permanently like turn off genes in its DNA, and so it's like part of cancer is just when one cell maybe that's like from your intestine that's supposed to grow really fast, like that gene that helps it grows really fast. Well, maybe it was turned off in a cell in, I don't know, your liver or wherever else, but then it gets turned back on, and so the mRNA kind of way, cancer medication that Sam Altman and them are talking about, like, it's just that you couldn't fix it with that, because that means that gene's good only in specific places though, so you'd have to localize it. Anyway, there's just so many problems with what they were saying that I just feel like the main thing they want is control and surveillance, and I don't know, I just don't I don't like it. So I just think people need to know kind of what's going on. I have Cooper over there. Michael, would you ever get a brain chip? Ugh, I don't know. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When Elon first talked about like Neuralink, I'm like, nah, bro. Like, that's not how neurons work. Like, it's like it's way too big. Like there really be that like how would you like snake your way in there with like some kind of probe and not like accidentally hit other neurons, right? Like that just, it still just seems weird. I mean, the case of like, the guy that has it right now and he's like playing video games, I mean, he's like quadriplegic, right? So it's like, you kind of wouldn't even know if you hit the wrong thing, to be honest, because like, it's like, oh, well, now your leg doesn't work. It's like, yeah, it didn't work before. So, that, and like, I don't know. I mean, like it'd be hard to know the side effects. Cause like, that leads me to another like thing that's super messed up, right? Electric shock therapy, right? So in the whole Cold War era, and along with the whole MK Ultra stuff, like they developed shock therapy where they like put electrodes on your brain and literally just run a huge current through your brain, so much that like you would break your teeth if you didn't have like a mouth guard in there, and you like literally have seizures. And what it does is it just kind of, like just breaks all the weakest connections, which have to do with short-term memory, because I think short-term memory is like it's not made to be perfect, permanent, and just kind of memory in general, I think, is also something you don't always use. You always use your motor. If you don't use it, you lose it, right? For the most part, because there's like every time a neuron fires, if you say like, oh, that was good, that had a good result, it will then secrete growth hormone on that circuit, on that neural circuit, and reinforce it and tighten it up. So like a neuron will be like this, talking to each other, and like chemicals are just kind of wandering over. It's really inefficient. But the more that you use it and reward it, it starts to wrap around to where like the junction is like almost touching. And so it makes it a smaller amount of like neurotransmitters can for sure get across, and so like it gets the signal faster and more consistent. And so if you don't use it, well, then it just starts kind of separating. So I think that like when they shock it, just breaks all the kind of vulnerable ones, but it, like, in my opinion, just hurts all of them. And then people just don't have a memory. And a lot of depression does happen from being stuck in the past, right? A lot of anxiety happens from thinking too far in the future. And I mean, really, the goal is just like, oh, I feel depressed. Like, oh, come back to the present moment. Like you can't change the past, right? You can, learn from it. But yet, like, it doesn't stop us from having regret. Right? Regret doesn't do anything in the present moment except for kind of short circuit your body. And, anxiety, right? You can't control the future. It doesn't exist yet. You can prepare for it, but, we just like pretend like we're living in the future and suffer in the future, but we're not actually preparing for it. We're just trying to imagine ourselves in the future and suffering in that future. And like that doesn't do anything good for our physiology either. So really, I mean, the solution is just like, like how our bodies are wired is we have a feeling, right? Our heart tells us one of 7 general things to do that's meaningful, kind of like a controller, right? And then our brain then logically frames that up of how to do that. And then you do an action, and then you rinse and repeat. So your body is only really meant to do one step at a time. I mean, obviously you can consider things that are on the future, different variables in that kind of logical phase of, how do I do this thing but people just get backlogged. But anyway, shock therapy, in my opinion, is not the response. But it was used for mind control because you could kind of wipe the slate clean and start again. So I bring that up as a long way to answer Cooper's question of the brain chip is, how would you know if, like, when they inserted it, it like messed up some of the neurons you did like, right? You wouldn't know because they're gone, right? So yeah, it's like, some people do like electric shock therapy, they say it worked for them. But like they don't have all of their faculties they originally had to gauge whether they liked it because they're gone. So it's like if all I remember is that I was like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's like all I know is I wasn't happy, right? And now, like, not burdened by these thoughts, right? Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not against the idea of the chips, the brain chips. I mean, I could see it being really useful. Even in the way, Elon Musk says, like, for a regular person about the speed of communication, right? Like, Grok 1 was kind of underwhelming, but like Grok 2 and Grok 3 should be coming out soon. Like, it's quite impressive. Like, you can, like, it was so hard to find information. Like, the ability to find information, has just gotten, a lot better. An AI just type in like, hey, what are these overlap? These 3 crazy ideas, right? And then it, it'll tell me. Sometimes I have to shame it, which is like really funny to shame Grok. I'm like, what the answer is. You're hiding it, you little Marxist, It's hilarious. And then when it like defends itself, I was like, bro, I was just testing you. I'm just messing with you. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm trying to think, what did I actually, like, sometimes I'll test it. I'll say I know answers. I have to go through my history. There was actually a funny one recently that that I asked it, and it gave me some BS answer, and I'm like, bro, really? Although, actually, I just realized I think it does each device, like, kind of stores them differently. Yeah. Anyway. All right. Well, this has been fun. You know, I really appreciate all of you, and yeah, I think we're gonna be good. I think we'll see what the volume does tomorrow for GameStop. I think if it does pick up the price discovery, I mean, that's really all we need is some volume to come in. It's kind of annoying that the mainstream finance media didn't say anything about the Sultan's comments about a partnership with GameStop, right? So they definitely should fix that. That's super messed up. Yeah, no, I mean, I think the volume will come in, and and I think we will be getting news soon. So I mean, I think GameStop will run. I mean, who knows? As soon as tomorrow, it could be. Yeah, I mean, I think it could be very soon. And then I think Bed Bath will be coming. I think we'll at least know on February 4th what's going on, because that is the next step. So anyway, appreciate you all. Thanks for coming to my stream. I did not plan on doing this, but there was just so much worth talking about.